At 77, Stevie Nicks lives like a shadow of her own legend. Once the witchy goddess of rock, the woman who could silence arenas with a single breath, she now walks barefoot through a silent Los Angeles garden, her lace shawl brushing against the morning dew. The world that once worshipped her roar now whispers about her solitude. Behind the velvet curtains and antique mirrors of her small 1,600-square-foot home lies a haunting truth that stuns even her most devoted fans. Stevie Nicks, the voice that defined a generation, now lives surrounded not by applause, but by ghosts of her past. Every corner of her house carries a memory. Lindsay's laughter from decades ago, the echo of a song written in heartbreak, the scent of her late friend Robin's perfume still lingering in the air. Fans who pass by her gate often leave notes, flowers, even tiny crystals, as if to bless the woman who once blessed them through her songs. She rarely answers. Instead, she writes in thick journals stacked beside her bed, hundreds of pages filled with confessions, regrets, and whispers to the dead. "Sometimes," she once admitted, "I write to the people I've lost because the living don't always understand." Her fortune, estimated at over $120 million, remains untouched by extravagance. The woman who once ruled stadiums now spends her days alone, watching sunlight fade through crystal prisms, her only company the music she no longer performs. Those who've seen her recently describe her as ethereal, half here, half somewhere else. To the public, it feels like an unsolved mystery. How could the most magnetic woman in rock retreat into such silence? The answer lies in a lifetime of storms, loves that shattered her, choices that haunted her, and fame that nearly destroyed her. The shocking truth isn't that Stevie Nicks has disappeared from the spotlight. It's that she has chosen to live among her ghosts, to become part of the myth she created. And now the world is finally beginning to understand the cost of being eternal. Her story did not begin in fame, but in movement. A childhood of constant goodbyes. Born Stephanie Lynn Nicks in Phoenix, Arizona, she grew up in the backseat of a car that was always headed somewhere new. Her father, an executive for Greyhound, uprooted the family from city to city. Salt Lake, El Paso, Los Angeles, San Francisco, each relocation carving another scar of loneliness into a sensitive child. Her mother, protective and private, kept her close, away from the world's cruelties, but in doing so, she unknowingly built a wall that Stevie would never quite climb over. "I never really fit anywhere," Stevie once said, "so I built my own world." That world began with her grandfather, Aaron Jess Nicks Sr., a failed country singer whose dreams had faded but whose faith never did. At 4 years old, she sat beside him on dusty porches, singing duets with a tremor of emotion far beyond her years. He taught her that music wasn't about notes, it was about truth. He bought her box after box of vinyl singles, Country Heartbreaks, Rockabilly Energy, Everly Brothers harmonies. She absorbed every sound, every sigh, until pain itself became a language she could sing. At 16, a Goya guitar appeared in her hands like destiny. The first song she wrote, "I've loved and I've lost and I'm sad but not blue," was a prophecy of her life to come. From that moment, Stevie understood something few teenagers ever do, that beauty and sorrow often bloom from the same root. By the late 60s, her world collided with fate. At a youth club in California, she heard a boy singing "California Dreamin'." Without thinking, she joined in, her voice weaving through his. The boy was Lindsey Buckingham. That instant sparked a connection that would change rock history and destroy hearts in equal measure. Soon they were inseparable, on stage and off, writing songs in cramped apartments, dreaming of stages that still felt a galaxy away. Their first joint project, Buckingham Nicks, 1973, failed commercially, but glowed with chemistry so real that even strangers could feel it. When Mick Fleetwood discovered them in 1975 and invited Lindsay to join Fleetwood Mac, Lindsay refused to go without Stevie. That decision lit a fuse no one could extinguish. Fleetwood Mac's arrival with Stevie at the microphone was electric. Her haunting presence, the black lace, the swirling skirts, the mystical voice, transformed the band from a blues rock act into a cultural phenomenon. Their first record together was a triumph. But Rumors in 1977 became a legend. It sold millions, but behind the glitter lay pure chaos. As the band recorded, every relationship inside it was falling apart. Stevie and Lindsay's love was dissolving, replaced by rivalry, bitterness, and unbearable proximity. They sang their heartbreaks at each other across microphones, her soft defiance in dreams. You say you want your freedom? Well, who am I to keep you down? And his biting retaliation in Go Your Own Way. Each lyric was a wound made public. The studio, heavy with tension and cocaine dust, became a battlefield. But from the ashes came brilliance. Rumors became one of the most successful albums of all time, its pain woven into melody, its bitterness gilded in gold. Yet success did not bring peace. Stevie found herself trapped between her art and her agony. We were breaking apart, she later said, but the songs held us together. Fame poured gasoline on every fracture. She became a star, but also a prisoner of her own myth. Fans saw a goddess in chiffon. She saw a woman bleeding under the lights. Even then, she refused to stop. When the band's chaos threatened to drown her, she stepped into the unknown, alone. In 1981, she released Belladonna, her first solo album. To the public, it was triumph. To Stevie, it was survival. She recorded while exhausted, heartbroken, and terrified of fading without the band. I thought, what if I'm only magic with them? She confessed. But Belladonna proved her wrong. It hit #1, carried by songs like Edge of 17, where she transformed grief into power. Behind the velvet and lace, she was fighting to stay alive. She wrote through sleepless nights, crying in hotel rooms that overlooked cities she didn't remember. I was surrounded by people, she once said, but utterly alone. The contrast between her image and her reality was striking. On stage, she twirled like a spell. Off stage, she collapsed into silence. Still, she never let the exhaustion show. Each performance felt like exorcism, purging heartbreak, fear, and longing into sound. What began as a dream between two young lovers had now become a legend carved in suffering. And even as fame consumed her, Stevie Nicks kept walking forward, draped in lace and resilience, unaware that the storms ahead would be darker and more personal than anything she had ever sung. Fame had made her untouchable, but it also turned her into a prisoner of her own reflection. The years following Belladonna should have been a victory lap, yet behind every sold-out tour, Stevie Nicks was unraveling. The pressure of two parallel careers, Fleetwood Mac and her solo ascent, became unbearable. Sleep disappeared. Exhaustion and loneliness became her only constants. She found herself trapped in glittering hotel suites, crying on silk pillows while the world below cheered her name. To keep going, she leaned on what everyone in the industry was leaning on then, cocaine. It began as fuel for performance, a quick fix to keep the music alive. But soon it was running her life. By the mid-1980s, her health was collapsing. A doctor warned her that one more line could kill her. The damage was literal, her nasal septum eaten away, and yet she couldn't stop. I was spinning gold out of my own blood, she once admitted. Finally, in 1986, she walked through the gates of the Betty Ford Center alone, terrified, clutching her notebooks like a lifeline. She survived, but at a price. When she emerged, the industry celebrated her recovery, but a quieter danger awaited. A physician prescribed clonazepam to help her relax. For 8 years, the drug dulled her edges, drained her creativity, and left her drifting through life in a fog. It didn't make me high. It made me nothing. The woman who once summoned storms on stage could barely finish a song. Her journals from that time read like silent screams, empty pages, scattered lyrics, apologies to herself. When she finally broke free, she was heavier, slower, but alive. Her comeback was not loud. It was whispered through grit. She returned to writing, to the raw power of honesty that had always been her truest medicine. But before redemption came more loss. Her best friend, Robin Anderson, the one constant through every tour and breakdown, was diagnosed with leukemia just days after giving birth to her son. The joy of new life collided with the shadow of death, and within weeks, Robin was gone. Stevie was shattered. In an act the world would never understand, she married Robin's grieving husband, Kim Anderson. "We didn't get married because we were in love. We were grieving," she confessed years later. The marriage lasted only 3 months, but the motive was heartbreaking. Stevie believed that by raising Robin's child, she could keep her friend alive. The press mocked her, the fans were confused, yet her intent was pure. She stayed close to the boy, paid for his education, watched him grow. Decades later, he named his own daughter Robin and taught her to call Stevie Grandma Stevie. For a woman who never had children, it was both redemption and reminder. "Maybe I couldn't bring Robin back," she said softly, "but I could keep her love alive." Then there was Lindsey Buckingham, the ghost she could never exorcise. They continued performing together long after love had turned to pain. Each concert was a reopening of an old wound, each duet, a negotiation between memory and music. She sang dreams while he stared through her, and the audience cheered without realizing they were watching two people bleed in harmony. In 2018, when Lindsey was dismissed from Fleetwood Mac, the final thread between them snapped. Yet when he suffered emergency heart surgery in 2021, she sent him a letter that stunned those who knew her. "I love you," it read. "I've always loved you. Maybe not the way you wanted, but with my whole heart." It was an unspoken goodbye between two souls bound by melody and misery. By the time the 1990s arrived, Stevie was a survivor many times over, of addiction, of fame, of herself. The world saw a witchy icon in flowing black lace. She saw a woman who had given everything for the right to still stand. Each heartbreak became a hymn, each failure a verse. And though her voice had grown raspier, heavier with years and damage, it was truer than ever. Every note carried the cost of living, every lyric an offering. Her legend was no longer about the glitter or the mystery, it was about endurance. Stevie Nicks had walked through fire, and somehow, impossibly, she was still singing. The next storm didn't come from fame or addiction. It came from love, the kind that doesn't destroy, but transforms. When Stevie Nicks met Joe Walsh in the early 1980s, she wasn't searching for another romance. She had already been burned, betrayed, and exhausted by the parade of men who had tried to control her or claim her. Yet Joe was different. The legendary guitarist from the Eagles was as wild and wounded as she was. They met during a tour, two weary souls orbiting the same chaos. "He was the one," Stevie would later admit. "He was everything I had ever wanted in a man." For the first time in years, she felt safe. No competition, no manipulation, no need to perform. They would spend long nights talking about music, about life, about pain. Joe's eyes held a grief she recognized, the loss of his young daughter, Emma, a tragedy that had hollowed him out. Stevie loved him not despite that sadness, but because of it. "He carried a broken heart," she said, "and I thought maybe if I held it, we could both heal." Their relationship was quiet compared to the spectacle of her past romances, but it was deeply intimate. They didn't need the stage, they needed stillness. She traveled with him, wrote beside him, and for a fleeting moment, she believed she had found peace. But addiction, his and hers, was a shadow that neither of them could escape. The constant touring, the exhaustion, the pressure of fame, all of it pushed them apart. "We loved each other too much to survive it," Stevie confessed. After they separated, she wrote one of her most tender songs, "Has Anyone Ever Written Anything for You?" A love letter to Joe and to the pain they both carried. When she performed it live, she would close her eyes and whisper, "This one's for him." Years later, she said, "If I had married anyone, it would have been Joe Walsh." But life had other plans. Their love didn't end. It simply changed shape, becoming a sacred memory she carried for the rest of her life. But before Joe, before healing, there had been another relationship that cut even deeper, her affair with Mick Fleetwood. It was 1978, the height of Fleetwood Mac's fame. The band was on top of the world, but behind the scenes, everything was splintering. Mick's marriage to model Jenny Boyd was already fragile, worn thin by touring and infidelity. Stevie and Mick had spent countless nights together as friends, confiding in each other about the chaos around them. Then one night, that friendship crossed a line. "It was doomed from the start," she later said. "It was a doomed thing." Their affair was short, but explosive. "It caused so much pain," Stevie admitted. "No flowers, no romance, just guilt." When Jenny found out, the fallout nearly tore the band apart. Lindsay was furious. Christine McVie was disgusted. The tension was unbearable. For Stevie, the guilt lingered for decades. She eventually apologized to Jenny, saying, "It was one of the most selfish things I've ever done." That confession became part of her legend, the proof that even icons are human, flawed, and haunted. Some fans believe the song Storms was her way of processing that guilt, with lyrics about broken illusions and impossible love. Whether true or not, that period marked a turning point in her songwriting. Her music grew darker, more self-aware, filled with shadows and confessions. The woman who once sang about dreams now sang about damage. But the most haunting chapter of her life came not from love, but from the impossible choice she made with Don Henley of the Eagles. Their relationship, though brief, was intense. It was during that time that Stevie discovered she was pregnant. She was at the height of her career. Her solo album Belladonna was soaring, her schedule relentless. Becoming a mother would have meant ending everything she had built. So she made the choice to terminate the pregnancy. It was a decision that would echo through her songs for the rest of her life. Dawn later revealed that the song Sarah, with its plea, "Wait a minute, baby, stay with me a while," was inspired by the daughter they never had. Stevie confirmed it years later, saying softly, "There was a little girl, and her name would have been Sarah." For decades, she carried that ghost. "My mission wasn't to be a mom or a wife," she once said. "My mission was to write songs that helped moms and wives survive." She never romanticized the decision. She owned it. "It broke my heart," she said, "but it was the only choice I could live with." In sharing that truth, Stevie gave a voice to countless women who had faced similar crossroads, but had no words to explain their pain. It was perhaps her most radical act. Not rebellion, not fame, but honesty. After Dawn came Jimmy Iovine, the man who produced Belladonna and helped turn it into a masterpiece. Jimmy was brilliant, intense, and controlling. Their creative chemistry was undeniable, but it blurred into something more personal. "He wanted to direct everything, my sound, my image, even my soul," Stevie recalled. "And for a while, I let him." Under his guidance, she created her most powerful work, but she also felt herself disappearing. "I wasn't sure if I was changing or if I was being changed." Their relationship ended quietly, without drama, but the damage was done. She left with a platinum album and a sense that she had traded too much of herself. Each man left a mark: Lindsay, Mick, Don, Jimmy, Joe. Each relationship was a mirror reflecting who Stevie was at that moment. A dreamer, a rebel, a healer, a survivor. But none could hold her. "They all loved the magic," she once said, "but no one wanted to live inside it." The truth was that Stevie Nicks was not built for ordinary love. Her devotion was to the music, to the spell that had both cursed and saved her. By the late 1980s, she was weary of passion and fame alike. She had lived 1,000 lives before turning 40. Her voice had deepened, her gaze grown still, but her soul remained restless. The woman who had once written dreams was now haunted by ghosts of lovers, of friends, of songs that had cost her everything. "I've been broken many times," she said, "but every time I write, I become whole again." And yet, even after decades of heartbreak, regret, and loss, the story of Stevie Nicks was far from over. Ahead of her still waited the darkest descent of all, a war not against love, but against herself. A battle that would strip away the last illusions and reveal the woman behind the myth, fragile, fierce, and somehow still unbroken. What followed was not another love story, but a reckoning. The 1980s brought Stevie Nicks face to face with the one enemy she could not outsing or outdance, herself. The endless touring, the fame, the sleepless nights, the emotional wounds left by decades of heartbreak, all of it had left her hollow. Cocaine had long stopped being her companion. It had become her captor. By 1986, she was a shadow, her health disintegrating, her body trembling beneath the weight of years of excess. When a doctor warned her that one more line could kill her, she finally surrendered. The woman who had commanded stadiums walked quietly through the gates of the Betty Ford Center, clutching her journals and a photograph of her grandfather. "I thought if I didn't go, I'd die," she later admitted. The world watched her recovery as if it were another show, but what happened inside those walls was anything but glamorous. Detoxing was agony. For weeks, she shook, hallucinated, and cried herself to sleep. It felt like every demon I had ever ignored was sitting on the edge of my bed. When she emerged, fragile but determined, she believed the worst was behind her. But fate had one more cruel twist to deliver. A well-meaning psychiatrist prescribed clonazepam, assuring her it was harmless, just something to help with the anxiety. It was anything but. For nearly 8 years, the drug sedated her, turning her into a shell. She gained 50 pounds, stopped writing, and floated through life in a haze. "I didn't feel joy or sadness," she said. "I didn't feel anything at all." This second addiction was quieter than the first, but far more insidious. It didn't destroy her body, it stole her soul. There were no late-night binges or wild headlines, only silence. It was like being buried alive, she confessed. The woman who once conjured storms now sat in dimly lit rooms, staring at blank pages. Her voice, the very essence of who she was, felt gone. It took another intervention, another painful detox, for her to escape, and when she did, she emerged changed, not triumphant, but wiser. "I was lucky," she said. "I got my life back. A lot of people don't." As if to test that fragile rebirth, illness came next. Exhaustion and years of pushing her body to the edge left her immune system shattered. She contracted the Epstein-Barr virus, a brutal condition that caused chronic fatigue and double pneumonia. For months, she could barely stand, let alone sing. Her lungs burned, her breathing shallow. "I thought it was over," she said. "I thought maybe I had sung my last song." When the pandemic arrived decades later, that same fear returned. Alone in her Los Angeles home, she admitted, "COVID would kill me. My lungs are too damaged." For the first time, the woman who had defied everything, critics, lovers, death itself, was terrified of being erased by silence. But Stevie Nicks never truly surrendered. Even in sickness, she found ritual and rhythm. Her mornings became sacred, barefoot walks through her garden, whispering lyrics to the flowers, talking to the ghosts she had outlived. "This is where I pray," she once said softly, standing among roses and ivy. "This is where I remember who I was." Her home, modest by Hollywood standards, became her sanctuary. The rooms were filled with crystals, handwritten notes, antique mirrors, and the hum of old records. "It's not a mansion," she said. "It's a memory." She sold her Paradise Valley estate in Arizona, the house where she once dreamed of dying peacefully among the mountains. "The walls knew my name," she said wistfully. In Los Angeles, she built something smaller but more spiritual, a space to write, reflect, and breathe. Her days no longer revolved around fame, but stillness. Her fortune remained vast, over 120 million, but she rarely indulged. She drove old cars, collected journals, and wrote letters she'd never send. Each day, she scribbled in spiral notebooks filled with perfume and ink. "When I'm gone," she told her goddaughters, "you'll smell gardenia on the pages. That's how you'll know it was me." Those journals are her real legacy. They hold decades of truth, love, guilt, recovery, and the confessions she never sang aloud. She has already decided what will happen to them after her death. They will go to her godchildren and to the son of Robin Anderson, her lost best friend. "He'll always have a piece of me," she said, smiling through tears. That boy, now a man with a family of his own, calls her Grandma Stevie. His daughter's name is Robin. Despite her isolation, Stevie remains a quiet force. Her voice, though raspier now, still commands reverence. When she performs, she does it rarely and with purpose. Each appearance feels like a visitation from another world. Draped in black lace and holding her tambourine like a relic, she steps onto the stage not as a rock star, but as a survivor. Every lyric she sings now carries the weight of time. Every pause feels like a prayer. The audience doesn't just watch her, they commune with her. Yet, for all her triumphs, Stevie Nicks never escaped the loneliness that fame carved into her. She never married again. She never had children. "It's not sadness," she once explained. "It's just how it was supposed to be." Her mission was never domestic, it was spiritual. "I wasn't meant to be a mother," she said. "I was meant to write songs that made mothers feel less alone." And she succeeded. Her music became a lifeline for millions of women who saw themselves in her pain, who found strength in her survival. Fans send letters saying, "You got me through my divorce," or "Landslide helped me forgive myself." Nurses play Edge of 17 on night shifts. Widows listen to "Has anyone ever written anything for you?" and cry in the dark. Stevie reads these messages and sometimes responds. "It's all still real to them," she said, "so I keep writing, even if no one sees it." In interviews, she often says she's not chasing fame anymore, she's chasing quiet. But even in that quiet, the world keeps chasing her. Young artists revere her as the godmother of emotional truth in music. Her songs appear in films, her image on shirts, her name whispered with reverence. She once joked, "I became the rock and roll witch and now I can't escape her." But behind the humor is a soft truth. The myth of Stevie Nicks may live forever, but the woman beneath it longs for nothing more than peace. At 77, she is still writing, still walking, still remembering. The woman who once danced through fire now moves gently through twilight. Her eyes may be tired, but they still glimmer with that same untamed light that once stunned the world. And though her voice may falter, when she sings, time itself seems to pause, because Stevie Nicks, even in silence, remains eternal. There is a stillness to Stevie Nicks now that feels almost holy. After decades of chasing light and running from shadows, she has found a strange peace within both. The woman who once howled into the wind now begins her mornings with quiet rituals, lighting candles, brewing tea, walking barefoot across the stone paths of her garden as dawn breaks. She touches the leaves, whispers to the air, and hums unfinished melodies to no one in particular. Sometimes she writes them down. Sometimes she lets them drift away. Not every song is meant to be heard, she once said. Some are just prayers. Her house in Los Angeles has become a time capsule, walls lined with vintage mirrors, velvet drapes, and old photographs that seem to breathe with memory. A tambourine still hangs beside her writing desk. A record player sits near the window, surrounded by stacks of her own albums. Fleetwood Mac vinyls worn from years of being played by the very woman who made them. Visitors describe her home as suspended in another era, a place where time bends. When she invites close friends inside, they say she moves through the rooms like a spirit, soft-spoken but entirely present. I live among ghosts, she admits with a wistful smile. But they're gentle with me now. On certain evenings, she sits in her studio corner, the air thick with incense and candlelight, and writes letters addressed to people who are no longer alive. Her mother Barbara, her best friend Robin, her grandfather, even Lindsay. She never mails them, but she keeps them stacked in a drawer marked unfinished business. Those who know her say she still dreams of the stage, though less often. When she does perform, it's never for the money or the fame. It's for the connection, the invisible thread that ties her to millions of people she's never met, but somehow understands. On stage, she is transformed. Still the mysterious figure in black, still spinning under dim golden light, her voice now cracked with age, yet more soulful than ever. Each concert feels like a farewell, each song a confession. The crowd sings along to Landslide, and she lets them take over the chorus, watching their faces illuminated by tears and memory. That's why I'm still here, she once said, because every time they sing with me, I remember who I am. Yet even in this serenity, there are moments when the past returns sharply. Certain songs still wound her. She has confessed that she cannot listen to Sarah or Storms without feeling her throat tighten. She no longer speaks of the 1970s with bitterness, only awe. We lived through something impossible, she reflects. We loved each other, hurt each other, made art from it, and somehow we're still alive. She keeps photographs of Lindsey Buckingham tucked inside one of her journals, alongside ticket stubs, letters, and a small pressed flower he once gave her. It's not nostalgia. It's reverence. He was my musical twin, she said softly. You don't stop loving someone like that. You just carry it differently. Her resilience has made her more than a rock icon. She has become a symbol of survival. Younger generations have discovered her through TikTok, through films, through whispers of her magic. When a viral video of a man skateboarding to dreams with a bottle of cranberry juice sent the song back to the top of the charts, Stevie laughed and said, I guess my ghost isn't done dancing. She embraced the renewed love from fans decades younger than her, performing with the same quiet fire that first made the world fall under her spell. Still, she never hides the cost of that immortality. I gave everything to the music, she said in a rare interview. My youth, my love, my voice. Sometimes I wonder if I gave too much. But when asked if she has regrets, her answer is simple. No, because the songs are my children. They're what I leave behind. To her, every lyric she ever wrote is a piece of herself offered to someone else in pain. If one woman got through the night because of Landslide, then it was worth it. Her godchildren and nieces visit often, filling the quiet with laughter. She tells them stories about the wild days, the hotel rooms that smelled of incense and vodka, the shows that nearly broke her, the moments of joy that kept her alive. She tells them about Robin, the friend she lost, and how grief can turn into purpose if you let it. When they ask about love, she smiles gently. I loved hard, she says. Maybe too hard, but I wouldn't change it. Love is what made the songs sing. Outside the public eye, Stevie has also become a silent philanthropist. She funds young female songwriters, pays for music programs in schools, and donates anonymously to shelters for women. "The world saved me with music," she said. "It's my turn to give it back." She rarely talks about these gestures. She prefers them to remain private, sacred. There are nights when she sits alone under a pale moon, strumming her guitar, letting melodies rise like ghosts from her fingers. Her voice, though weathered, still carries the same ache that captivated millions. The neighbors sometimes hear her singing softly through open windows. "It's haunting," one said, "like she's singing to heaven." When journalists ask about her legacy, she doesn't talk about awards or records. She talks about survival. "I didn't plan to become a legend," she said. "I just refused to give up." That refusal, fierce, poetic, and unrelenting, has kept her alive long after the glitter faded. To her fans, she is the embodiment of endurance, proof that art can outlive the pain that created it. Now at 77, Stevie Nicks lives a life of deliberate quiet. She no longer seeks the noise of applause but the hum of her own breath. Yet her influence reverberates everywhere. Her words quoted in novels, her songs used in films, her image immortalized in art. She is both myth and mortal, forever balancing between the two. If you listen closely on certain nights, you can almost hear her voice carried on the California wind, soft, cracked, unyielding. "Don't stop dreaming," she seems to whisper, "even when it hurts." That is the essence of Stevie Nicks. Not perfection, not glamour, but truth. She is the storm and the calm that follows, the last echo of a generation that burned bright and refused to fade. Her life remains a melody without an ending, a song that drifts through time, unbroken, unforgettable. And for those who have ever cried to her music, who have ever found strength in her words, she lives on not as a distant star, but as something closer, something eternal, a mirror, a muse, a survivor, the voice of heartbreak, rebirth, and the enduring power of dreams. There is a kind of power that only comes from surviving yourself, and Stevie Nicks embodies it with every breath she takes. The years have softened her edges, but not her spirit. Her days move slower now, but the energy that once shook arenas still hums quietly beneath her skin. At 77, she is a living paradox, fragile yet fierce, calm yet full of fire. Those who meet her describe an aura that feels almost supernatural. "She doesn't age," one longtime friend said. "She just transforms." The soft-spoken woman who greets guests in her Los Angeles home bears little resemblance to the wild rock goddess of the 1970s. Yet when she looks up, her eyes still flash with the same silver defiance that once dared the world to understand her. For all her quiet these days, the echoes of her past never stop following her. Fleetwood Mac, even decades later, remains part of her bloodstream. When Christine McVie passed away in 2022, Stevie was devastated. "A piece of my heart flew away that day," she wrote in an open letter to fans. The bond between the two women had been complicated, filled with artistic tension and sisterly love, but their friendship was the one constant in the chaos of fame. At the memorial, Stevie sang softly under her breath, unable to hold back tears. "I'll see you on the other side of the rainbow," she whispered, her voice trembling. The audience fell silent. It wasn't a performance, it was a prayer. After Christine's death, Stevie retreated even further from the public eye. The pandemic had already isolated her. Now grief sealed her off completely. She spent months at home, reading old journals, revisiting letters she had written to the people she lost: Robin, her mother, Lindsay, Christine. "I realized," she said in an interview, "that my whole life has been about learning how to say goodbye." But in that acknowledgement, she found peace. Her solitude is no longer a punishment. It's a sanctuary. "I'm not lonely," she clarified. "I'm with my memories, and they're enough." Her memories, after all, are not just personal. They're pieces of cultural history. The 1970s and 1980s would not sound the same without her voice, without that husky vibrato that turned confession into anthem. Today's artists know it. Harry Styles calls her his fairy godmother. Taylor Swift has said that Landslide changed the way she wrote lyrics forever. Even younger singers, Billie Eilish, Florence Welch, Lana Del Rey, cite Stevie as a guiding star. She mentors many of them quietly, offering advice, sometimes handwritten notes. To one rising artist, she sent a letter that read, "Protect your magic. It's easy to lose it when people start telling you who you should be." That, she admits, is the lesson that cost her the most. And yet, despite her retreat from the stage, Stevie cannot resist the occasional return. When she does, it feels like the world holds its breath. Her recent tours are not about spectacle anymore. They are pilgrimages. The crowds are multi-generational. Teenagers in vintage lace, middle-aged fans who grew up with rumors, older women who once sang Landslide to their own children. When she appears, the lights dim and a hush falls over the arena. Then comes that unmistakable voice, weathered but unwavering. Each word feels carved from experience. During her performances, fans often cry not from sadness, but from recognition. It's as if they see their own lives reflected in hers. Stevie calls these concerts circles of energy. She performs not to relive the past, but to pass something on. "When I sing now," she explains, "I'm not asking people to remember who I was. I'm asking them to feel what we all still are." Her shows end not with fireworks, but with stillness, thousands of people holding their phones like candles as she sings the final lines of Landslide. "I'm getting older too," she whispers, smiling faintly as if in conversation with time itself. But even as she slows down, Stevie continues to write. Her notebooks are full. Poems, reflections, fragments of songs. Some are letters to the future, meant to be read after she's gone. She's hinted that she has written her own epitaph, hidden among those pages. She dreamed, she fell, she rose, and she kept singing. It's not melodrama, it's truth. Because every chapter of her life, from the heartbreaks to the recoveries, has been an act of singing through pain. There are rumors she is working on one final studio project, something raw and stripped of artifice, a collection of songs that sound like whispered confessions. "It's not about the past," she said cryptically. "It's about what's left." Her fans await it with reverence, aware that every word might be her last. When asked what she fears most now, she doesn't mention death or aging. "Forgetting," she says simply. "Not by others, by myself." That's why she writes every day, capturing thoughts before they fade. Each journal, each song, each letter is an anchor to her identity. She refuses to let time erase her truth. "I want people to know I was here," she said. "Not just the myth, but the woman." As twilight deepens over her Los Angeles home, Stevie sits by the window, wrapped in a shawl that once belonged to her mother. The city glows beneath her, distant and indifferent. She doesn't mind. The fame, the chaos, the pain, they have all softened into background noise. What remains is a woman who survived the unthinkable and turned it into art. She is not the same Stevie Nicks who twirled in chiffon under spotlights. She is something rarer, a soul who burned, healed, and became light. Her story is no longer about rock and roll. It's about endurance, redemption, and grace. The little girl who once sang beside her grandfather has kept her promise. She told the truth, no matter how beautiful or broken. And so she continues to write, to remember, to live quietly but deliberately. She doesn't seek applause anymore. She seeks meaning. The world may one day forget the scandals, the heartbreaks, the headlines, but it will never forget her songs. They are eternal echoes of a woman who refused to fade. Because in the end, Stevie Nicks was never just a singer. She was, and still is, a mirror. For every person who has ever lost something, loved someone, or walked alone through the wreckage of their own choices, she remains a voice in the darkness whispering, "You can survive this too." As the world keeps changing around her, Stevie Nicks stands as the last guardian of an era that believed in feeling before perfection. The years have stripped away the noise, but not the resonance. In her solitude, she has become something more than a musician. She is a living archive of emotion. Her house breathes with memories, gold records beside fading Polaroids, velvet curtains framing the sunlight, a tambourine resting on an old chair. Every detail tells a story. Every scent of gardenia, incense, and thyme reminds visitors that this is not just a home, but a shrine to survival. Every morning begins the same way. She wakes before sunrise, wraps herself in a black shawl, and walks the garden paths barefoot. The air is cool, heavy with dew, and somewhere a wind chime hums in soft rhythm. She hums along, the tune unrecognizable but full of feeling. This is how she writes now, not for charts or acclaim, but for the silence itself. "I still talk to the moon," she once said. "It listens better than people." Her songs, written in looping cursive across spiral notebooks, are no longer anthems of heartbreak. They are conversations with time. Yet even now, her influence grows. Young artists from across the world seek her blessing. Taylor Swift called her the voice of every woman who ever had to be strong. Harry Styles invited her to share the stage, and when they sang Landslide together, the generations merged into one trembling note. Florence Welch, Lana Del Rey, and Haim all cite her as their North Star. They don't just admire her music. They draw from her resilience, the courage to be soft in a world that rewards armor. Stevie listens to their songs and smiles. "They're the daughters I never had," she says, her voice tender. When she reflects on her past, she no longer feels the sting of regret. "I lived too much," she jokes, "but at least I lived." She speaks openly about the choices that once haunted her, the lost child, the broken loves, the addictions that almost stole her life. "Every scar is a story," she says, "and stories are all we leave behind." It's that unflinching honesty that keeps her legend alive. She never tried to rewrite her mistakes, she simply turned them into art. In recent years, she has become more protective of her legacy. Her journals, numbering in the hundreds, fill entire drawers in her studio. They contain lyrics, dreams, sketches, and letters addressed to the people she's loved and lost. "When I'm gone," she told her goddaughters, "you'll know me through these. Don't change a word." Each entry is infused with her handwriting, flowing loops, little stars drawn in margins, the scent of her favorite perfume pressed into the paper. These journals, she insists, are her real autobiography, not for profit but for remembrance. She still performs occasionally, but only when it feels right. Her shows have taken on the atmosphere of sacred rituals. The lights dim, the crowd holds its breath, and she steps into the spotlight, a silhouette of lace and shadow. Her voice trembles but never breaks. When she sings Edge of 17, the audience doesn't just hear a hit song, they hear decades of pain, love, and endurance echoing through her. Between verses, she sometimes pauses, smiling quietly, as if speaking to someone invisible. Fans claim they can feel it, a presence, an aura, something unexplainable. "It's not nostalgia," one said. "It's communion." Away from the stage, Stevie has become something of an oracle for resilience. She donates quietly to women's shelters and music education programs, mentoring young writers who remind her of herself at 16, dreamers scribbling lyrics in the margins of notebooks. "The world will tell you you're too emotional," she tells them, "but emotion is the art. Never lose it." Still, beneath her serenity lies a deep understanding of impermanence. Many of her peers are gone now, Tom Petty, Prince, David Bowie. I've outlived too many people I love, she says, her voice cracking slightly. Sometimes I wonder why I'm still here, and then I remember it's to tell their stories. She often visits the seaside cliffs near Big Sur, where she wrote Landslide, sitting for hours as the waves crash below. That's where I go to remember who I was, she says, and to thank the universe that I survived. As evening falls, she lights candles around her home, letting their glow flicker across the gold and silver frames that hold her history. She puts on an old Fleetwood Mac record, sometimes humming, sometimes laughing softly when she hears her younger self's voice. That girl didn't know what was coming, she murmurs. But she was brave. For fans around the world, Stevie Nicks remains a myth they can still touch. She is both distant and intimate, human and holy. She no longer needs the roar of applause to prove she mattered. Her songs, her stories, her presence, they are her immortality. The world doesn't need another star, she once said. It needs a heartbeat. And that is what she has given. A rhythm that has outlasted heartbreak, addiction, and time itself. The little girl who built castles in her imagination grew into a woman who built a universe out of pain and poetry. Now, as the night deepens around her Los Angeles home, she closes her journal, presses her hand against the window pane, and watches the moon rise. The garden hums, the wind shifts, and for a moment, everything feels weightless. Somewhere out there, someone listens to Dreams for the first time, not knowing the full story behind it. The love, the loss, the war that birthed it. But Stevie knows. She smiles, knowing her music is still carrying people through their darkest nights. That is her greatest triumph. Not the record sold, not the awards, but the survival of the human spirit woven into every melody she ever wrote. Stevie Nicks no longer performs for the world. She performs for the soul of it. And as long as hearts break and heal, her voice will echo across generations. A reminder that even the most shattered dreams can still sing. There is something profoundly human about Stevie Nicks that goes beyond fame, beyond music, beyond even the idea of celebrity. Her story is not one of perfect triumph. It is one of survival, of scars turned into songs, of pain alchemized into poetry. To understand Stevie is to understand what it means to be alive, to fall apart and find yourself again in the echo of your own voice. And now, at 77, as she walks barefoot through her garden under a California sunrise, the world finally sees her for what she truly is. Not just a rock legend, but a woman who gave her life to art, to truth, and to love in all its broken forms. Every song she ever wrote came from a real wound. Landslide was her reflection on change and fear. Dreams was a plea for freedom and forgiveness. Edge of 17 was the cry of rebirth from ashes. Behind each lyric was a woman who never stopped believing in beauty, even when the world was cruel. She was never afraid to bleed publicly, to show her weakness. That's what made her immortal. She once said, "If my songs help one person get through the night, then I've done my job." And she did far more than that. She helped generations survive heartbreak, loss, and loneliness. She gave millions of people permission to feel, to dream, to believe that vulnerability is not failure, it's strength. There's a reason her music endures. Stevie Nicks doesn't sing about fairy tale love or easy victories. She sings about real life, messy, beautiful, unforgiving. Her voice trembles with the truth that perfection is overrated and that the most powerful stories are born from imperfection. When she sings live now, you can hear every year she has lived in her tone. It's cracked and raw, but it vibrates with the wisdom of someone who has seen everything and still chooses love over bitterness. That's the real miracle of Stevie Nicks. After everything, betrayals, addiction, loss, she still believes in love. She has said many times that her mission was never to be a wife or a mother, but to write songs that made wives and mothers feel less alone. And she succeeded. Women around the world have cried to her music, danced to it, healed through it. Nurses play Edge of 17 on night shifts to stay awake. Widows listen to Has Anyone Ever Written Anything for You? And find peace. Young girls sing dreams into hairbrushes, not knowing they are invoking decades of resilience. Stevie's voice has carried across generations because it carries something eternal, the reminder that even when life shatters you, you can still sing. In her quiet Los Angeles home, Stevie often receives letters from fans. She keeps many of them, tied in ribbons, stacked in boxes near her piano. "Sometimes I read them when I can't sleep," she said. "They remind me that I mattered." Fans tell her about divorces, illnesses, broken hearts, and how her music saved them. One woman wrote, "Your song Landslide stopped me from giving up on life." Another said, "When I lost my husband, Silver Springs made me believe love never really ends." Stevie never dismisses these words. She reads them slowly, tears falling silently. "They saved me as much as I saved them," she admitted. That's the truth. What she has built through her art is not a career, it's a connection. Every time she steps on stage, even now, the audience isn't watching a performance. They are witnessing communion. When she closes her eyes and sings, it feels like she's opening a doorway between worlds, the past and the present, pain and beauty, mortality and memory. You can feel it in the air, the hush, the trembling, the way thousands of strangers breathe in sync for one fragile moment. That's not fame. That's love. It's easy to forget that behind the legend is a human being who still wakes up some mornings uncertain, who still writes in her journal to process feelings she can't say aloud. She still grieves, still wonders if she's done enough, but she never stops creating. "I don't know how to live without writing," she confessed. "If I stop, I disappear." Her journals, hundreds of them, are her true autobiography. She doesn't write to boast. She writes to remember, to keep her spirit alive. She calls them her letters to the universe. When she finally leaves this world, her words will remain, a treasure map of emotions that generations will read and find themselves within. But we don't have to wait for that to honor her. We can honor her now, by listening, by remembering, by celebrating the woman who showed us that magic is real, and that it lives inside our pain. Stevie Nicks gave her entire life so that others could feel less alone. She sang through grief, through illness, through heartbreak, and she never hid behind perfection. She didn't want to be worshipped, she wanted to be understood. So if you have ever been comforted by Landslide, if you have ever whispered dreams while crying in your car, if her words have ever reminded you that you are strong enough to keep going, then take a moment right now to say thank you. Like this video, share her story, and subscribe so that her voice continues to echo through every corner of the digital world, reaching those who need it most. Your small gesture is a tribute to an extraordinary woman who has carried the pain of millions and turned it into beauty. Stevie Nicks once said, "I'm not immortal, but my songs might be." She was right, because when she sings, the years melt away. You don't see a 77-year-old woman. You see a soul made of light, still burning after all the storms. Her story is not just about music, it's about resilience, about the courage to stay soft in a hard world. She has taught us that even when your heart breaks, even when life doesn't go as planned, you can still rise, still dance, still believe. Her legacy isn't measured in gold records or awards. It's measured in hearts touched, in lives changed, in tears wiped away by the sound of her voice. She is proof that true power lies in vulnerability, that beauty can bloom from ruin, and that it's never too late to forgive yourself. So let us honor her, not just as a star, but as a symbol of endurance. Let us remember her every time we face our own landslides, every time life demands that we rebuild. Because if Stevie Nicks taught us anything, it's this: no matter how deep the fall, There is always music waiting to lift you. If her story moved you, if her journey inspired you, don't let it fade. Hit like to show your respect. Share this video so her voice reaches someone who needs hope tonight. Subscribe to our channel to keep her legacy alive, so together we can celebrate not just the legend, but the woman, the heart, the soul, the survivor, Stevie Nicks. Because in a world full of noise, she remains the quiet truth we all need to hear. You are never too broken to shine again.